Hopes of economic recovery are growing in the US, fueling expectations that the Federal Reserve will announce plans to start reducing its balance sheet. Meanwhile, markets in Asia and South Korea have been showing a downward trend over the past week. So what has contributed to this trend, and how will the Fed's tapering announcement affect the Asian stock market? For this, we connect with Jinill, Professor of Economics at Korea University, who formerly served as a senior economist at the Federal Reserve Board's Division of Monetary Affairs. We also have Yasin, NABI, economics researcher at Hannam University and CEO of Abresham Limited. A very warm welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us this morning. And well, Professor Kim, it's been quite exciting overnight here in South Korea as the Fed's minutes for July, they were released just a few hours ago, and well, they seem to indicate that there's an increasing consensus for starting tapering quite soon, due to most of it due to optimism about economic recovery. But the officials have emphasized that this isn't going to be immediately followed by a rate hike. So with US inflation at highs not seen over a decade and the job numbers growing, it's coming under increasing pressure to take some kind of action. How long do you think it can actually keep up its accommodative stance?
So that accommodative stance started after COVID-19. So if you look back 18 months ago, say around the March of last year, I think that's when the massive economic stimulus, including the quantitative easing, started. So meaning the Federal Reserve lowered the interest rate to zero, and then did the quantitative easing in the spring and summer. That's continued up to now. What they mean by tapering is that they will decrease the amount they buy the Treasury and the MBS. And then after they decrease or after they taper, they will start increasing the federal funds rate. So as you said, there will be a tapering period for a while, and they're debating how long that would be. And then they will think about increasing the interest rate. That's like a ways after the tapering finishes.
So it's taking its time there. And well, Professor Kim, are there signs that inflationary pressures could persist for longer as this new Delta variant continues to impact supply chains around the world?
Yes, the Delta variant is a concern the last couple of weeks. So the minutes were released at the 2 p.m. Eastern Daytime, which is 3 a.m. in Korean time because of the summertime in the United States. But that does not reflect the status right now, but it does reflect the status of the FOMC's judgment 3 weeks ago when the FOMC meeting was held, which means that up to then, the economy was in a better situation than it is now. As you mentioned, due to the Delta variant, that's why the economic situation is not as good as 3 weeks ago, but the tone of the FOMC participants got a little bit stronger as well, which means that Delta variant not as serious, at least from monetary policy standpoint, as some people may view during the last couple of weeks. So Delta variant is an important one. It's sad that we have it again. However, it would not influence the path of U.S. policy for the months to come.
Well, there have been a lot of questions around the Delta variant and also the US's tapering timing here across Asian markets. And to bring you into the conversation, Mr. NABI, now South Korea's stock market, it took quite a battering over the past week, finishing lower in 8 straight sessions, although it did rebound slightly on Wednesday. So what's really caused this downward trend, particularly among the big tech stocks?
First of all, hello, Mrs. Soyoung, and about the Korean stock market, it is battering for the past few weeks. I think it's really difficult to identify the specific factors that influences the market as a whole. There are many different kinds of factors. It can be like internal factors and it can be external factors, and you know that it's really difficult to identify the main factors when it comes to analyzing the stock market and the prices in the market. But mainly, I think the COVID-19 is also kind of surrounding, and people are thinking that when it's going to finish, but it is keeping up with the people, and it's not finishing. So this can cause also to keep battering the stock market in South Korea.
Well, Ms. Nabi, other Asian markets have also been rather bumpy in recent days. What are the factors that are affecting investor sentiment?
The investor sentiments probably among the Asian markets. So, in Asia these days, the political issues are not really well. Like China is also China and Hong Kong, like Hansi Index is also the biggest mainland for the stock market, as well as like the CSI 300 is also the biggest mainland in China. And the political issues that is happening now in Afghanistan, and China is meeting like the Taliban and other sources in Pakistan and India, it's happening between them. These can cause a big bump up amid Delta variant also in Asian stock market.
Well, Professor Kim, there has been some nervousness among emerging markets and also markets here in Asia as well. Emerging markets in particular, they've been rather concerned that there might be another round of the taper tantrum like that seen in 2013 when the US rate hike triggered an outflow of capital as investors chased yield elsewhere. There was a sell-off of currency and also a surge in borrowing costs. What is your view on this, and do you think Asian central banks are better prepared now?
So the world is better prepared in absolute level sense. However, as Dr. Nabi knows very well, since he's participating in the market depends on the relative difference across countries. So when the Fed tapering starts, money should come away from some countries. As you mentioned, it's less likely for the Asian countries to be affected by the upcoming taper tantrum, if there is a taper tantrum. However, some countries should be affected. So since, as you mentioned, Asian countries like Korea, China, and Taiwan, they are better prepared than, say, South Africa or Brazil or Turkey. That's for sure. But that does not say that these Asian countries are immune from the possible next taper tantrum to come.
Professor Kim, would you say that these countries that you mentioned, like South Korea, China, and Taiwan, they've been able to improve their fundamentals to prepare for possible tapering and US rate hikes that are to come?
Yes, they are better prepared in the fundamental sense, and also they have accumulated more international reserves than years ago. And some international financial experts are critiquing that these Asian countries are accumulating too much reserve. Of course, there is a cost, but that's the decision of each country.
Well, Mr. Nabi, now, despite the Kospi's relatively weak performance seen in recent days, it is still up by around 10% compared to last year, and it hit record highs this year, exceeding 3,300 in early 2021. What would you attribute this rise to, and how significant is this upward trend?
For the second and third quarter, Kospi is, I think, doing well. So, and it was doing well. So, and it also depends to the northern policies, and that is not really going well with the South Korea. And I think Kospi will end up again above 3,500 in the fourth Q actually. So people are also, when you're investing in a stock market, Kospi and other things, they are mostly thinking from the broader point, which is the macroeconomic points that people are concerning about the uncertainty with the Korean market, and as well as with the relationship of South Korea with North Korea. So this is really the bigger challenge with the Kospi and as well as like Kosdaq.
Well, Professor Kim, some expected the Bank of Korea to introduce rate hikes as early as August, but with the surge of the Delta variant, is this still on the cards? When would you recommend rate hikes to be introduced, and how should they be eased in to really minimize negative impact?
So Bank of Korea is having the MPC meeting exactly in a week, I believe. So by this time, they must be meeting and preparing for the statement. And without the Delta variant, the probability of a rate hike in the upcoming meeting was really high. But as I mentioned about the United States, even with the Delta variant, the decision will depend on how we view the Delta variant. If we are certain that this variant is the last variant, then we may wait a meeting or two more. However, if we live with COVID and then another type of variants would come again, then it's sort of the permanent shock. Then we have to live with it. Then the Bank of Korea may not change its course of actions, as I mentioned for the case of the Federal Reserve.
Right, so the Bank of Korea remaining quite cautious in terms of what happens with this ongoing pandemic, of course. And well, Mr. NABI, how do you expect the KOSPI to finish this year? Do you think the persistence of this Delta variant is going to play a major factor in spooking investors? Mr. NABI?
Yes. I'm sorry, yes. Actually, for the KOSPI, as I said, that this year it will end up like above 3,500. It will be much better than the last year. So as we see for the second quarter and the third quarter, the KOSPI is doing really great. So and I'm expecting that in the third quarter as well, KOSPI will end up well in this year in South Korea.
How stable do you think the Korean market is, Mr. NABI? I mean, what do you make of this recent influx of retail investors who are investing and even taking out loans to, invest very heavily in these new IPOs?
Yes, people love to have there is small money to see it in a bigger amount in the future. So that's why a lot of people are like eagerly willing to just go and invest in IPOs. So, and I think 95% of the IPOs are not really going well, not going to end up well. But still, people are thinking from their own different points, without analyzing the market from their broader point. It is IPOs. I think is much riskier than the other, big cap companies. And the Korean stock market is stable. It's quite stable since the last year. Actually, when people are seeing that South Korea is doing great with their political issues with other countries, so that is also really helping the stock market in South Korea to grow and be more stable.
What would your opinion be on this, Professor Kim? What do you make of these small investors, these retail investors getting more and more involved in the market?
So for Korea in general, I think the movements towards this marketization or more people getting involved is a good sign. Whether it's too much for the last 2 years, that's a different question. So, and personally, Dr. NABI mentioned the IPO, said that I had been a exterior director of the Kakao Bank up to early this year, and I hope it makes the Mr. NABI's 10% rather than 90%. But in general, this marketization, securitization, and also a lot of people getting involved in the asset market are a good sign for Korean economy in general, but it's too much in the sense of the degree of the borrowing like Youngkel, and also future assets to buy, and that they are broadening the array of assets to crypto assets, to other assets, and then it's hard to tell where the boundary is, and it's for the history and for the markets to tell.
So hopefully investors won't get too ahead of themselves and be more prudent about their decisions.
Yes, but no risk, no return. So
that's very
it's a
true.
fair game.
No pain, no gain. Well, this
Correct.
is where we have to leave the interview today. But that was Professor Jinill, Professor of Economics at Korea University, and Yasin, CEO of Abresham Limited. Thank you both so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching.